Okay, we're live. Cool. Just setting up my screen. And, okay, thank you, Facebook. Come back, dashboard. Oh geez, Facebook changes things all the time. There we go. All right, we're live. Hi. Hello. I don't know if I'm going to use these or not. But let me know if you're tuning in, that the sound quality is good. Remembered my headphones today. Let me know where you're tuning in from. Say hi. Let's get this party started. Hi, I'm Seychelle, and we're here for another exciting episode of Talk Stories. And kind of starting to put these together into a little bit of a series. And if you've been following along, or even if you haven't, they're all recorded, and I reference a lot of my videos. You can watch the replays. But yeah, putting together these technical series so that you're getting a lot of really great information, little chunks at a time, about the paddle stroke. So yeah, okay, cool. It looks like everything's working. So today, what I want to talk about is using your body weight when you're paddling. So it's a really, really important topic to discuss for several reasons. So I want to get into a little bit of how you're using your body weight and you don't even realize it, ways to use your body weight that can benefit different aspects of your stroke, like steering and board trim, and then, of course, how you can use body weight in your catch and actually throughout your entire stroke, how you're using your entire body, how this is a full body complex movement sport, and how we're using our body to propel ourselves. Yeah, so those are some of the things I want to dive in and talk about today. Looks like we've got a few viewers. I got some thumbs up, so I think we're good to jump in. I got a few notes, so I'm just going to start with you're using your body weight when you're paddling. Whether you realize it or not, you're already doing it. So we use our body weight. Your body weight on the board affects the board. So one of the things I talk about a lot, and I talk about this in two other videos. One is steering your board, and then the other one is paddling into or paddling in a side wind. I talk about your body weight on one foot or the other from side to side on your board. That's actually steering your board. So when I see this most often, you're paddling, and on your paddling side, you end up putting a little bit more weight on your paddling side every time you take a stroke on that side, rather than keeping equal body weight. These are my feet. Rather than keeping equal body weight in your feet and having your board ride rather smoothly through the water, we end up putting more body weight from one side to the other when we're not thinking about it, and our board tips from side to side. And what that does is the side that I weight down onto, that rail is going to dig into the water a little bit more, and that's actually going to steer me. It's not going to turn me, but it's going to steer me away from that side of the board. So if I'm using that consciously, I'm actually going to use a little bit more body weight onto the opposite side that I want to steer. So if I want to steer my board to the left, say I have a wind coming from the left side and I want to steer my board upwind a little bit so I'm not just getting blown down, I'm going to put more body weight on the right side of my board. I'm going to sink the right rail in the opposite way that I want to steer. So that's one of the most common ways we're using body weight and not even realizing it, or maybe we're realizing it, but that's definitely something to always be practicing, is when you're trying to go in a straight line, keeping your body weight equal in both feet and not leaning from one side to the other, sticking one hip way out. When I take a stroke on this side, I'm not putting extra weight in that leg every time. I'm not leaning one side or the other. And you'll see that. Hopefully you can feel that. But if you can't feel it, hopefully you can see it. If you look at the nose of your board, is it tipping from side to side? Can you make it ride more smoothly through the water? So a lot more on that in steering your board. I did that a few weeks ago. Go find it. Maybe I can put it in the comments. It's also going to be on the YouTube channel for SIC. I can find the link and put it in the comments. So then another way that we are using our body weight when we paddle, and maybe realize it, maybe we don't, is the trim of your board. So the trim of your board is, here's my, the length of my board, and here's the nose of my board. Trim would be this way, right? So I was just talking about side to side. Now I'm talking about back to front. So the further forward I stand on my board, I'm going to trim the nose down. The further back I stand on my board, I'm going to trim the tail down or the nose up. And that affects how your board moves through the water. And for the most part, boards are designed so that we stand right in the center of the board, right next to the handle, and that's trimmed evenly through the water. But different board shapes ride slightly differently, even with a small adjustment in your trim where your feet are. So if my wrist crease is the handle of my board, just slight adjustments, a couple of inches or centimeters in either direction does make a difference. And you can use that to your advantage. You see this in a big way in downwinding. You see, or surfing. Surfing, definitely, you see paddlers or pivot turns getting all the way to the back of the board. But even in downwinding, or even in any sort of wind, any sort of chop, any sort of, we are trying to always have the nose of the board riding, depending on the shape of your board, just above the water. We don't want the nose to be going down and hitting the waves. We don't want the nose to be way up. We want it to be at all times using as much surface area as we can. But if we're in dynamic water, if we have waves, even wakes, whatever it is, you know, the water's not perfectly flat, right? So in a perfect world, we have equal body weight in both feet and our board rides perfectly flat. But really, in reality, we're always kind of steering one direction or the other. And in a perfect world, you know, we have perfectly flat water, if you like flat water paddling. But in reality, there's always a little bit of movement to the water. So we're always going to be adjusting our trim a little bit if that's something that we are used to doing using our body weight. And that can be as simple as, let's see, you probably want to see my feet. That can be as simple as, you know, leaning a little body weight forward or a little body weight back. It can be as subtle as a very small stagger of your feet. One foot is about half a foot length in front of the other. It could be a bigger stagger, a surf stance. You don't typically see that unless you're surfing or downwinding. But you can also be adjusting that. So I am always moving my feet a little bit, maybe not exactly like this, dancing on my board, but I move my feet a lot on my board because I'm adjusting my body weight to get the nose of my board down, body weight forward, or get the nose of my board up, body weight back. So a stagger stance can help with that, but you can also, I do it when I'm drafting. Usually I'll get back a couple of inches when I'm drafting so the nose lifts up a little bit so I can ride the wake of the board of the person in front of me a little bit. So if that's new for you, play with that. You know, if you have a GPS on your board, even better. You can adjust, you know, several inches in one direction or the other, or even just a couple inches in one direction or the other. You can play with stagger stance and watch as you're shifting your body weight forward and backwards. This is great to practice when you're doing upwind, downwind. Shifting the body weight forward to get the nose down and shifting the body weight back to get the nose up. So that's another way that you're using body weight. And I talk about this again, even more in my video on paddling upwind. So you can watch that one too for more reference. And then what I really want to talk about today, and nobody's leaving me any comments, and I have like so many of you guys thumbs upping, which is great, and viewing, which is awesome. But I would love to hear your comments and questions, or just say hi. So, so the bulk of what I want to talk about today, and let me know if this is all making sense. Okay. Okay, so using body weight at the catch, using body weight in our stroke technique. So your distance per stroke is going to be, which factors into your speed. Your distance per stroke is not how far in front of you can reach to touch. It's how far in front of you. And again, this is everything that I say is the way that I view paddling, the way that I think about it, the way I coach it. It is by no means my way or the highway. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't, also great. I highly recommend listening to several different coaches explain these concepts, because it is helpful to hear things in different ways from different folks. But so for me, the catch, it's not about how far you can reach. It's about how far in front of you can get your blade to set, which means we're trying to do, the reason we use the word catch is we're trying to have our paddle enter the water, and we're trying to catch, like we've grabbed onto the water, so that when we pull our body past the paddle, our paddle is stuck in that spot, and we're not pulling our paddle back towards us. So we're trying to set our blade, pull ourselves past our paddle. So what's a better indicator of your distance per stroke, or the which factors into your speed, is not going to be how far out in front of you can reach. It's going to be how far out in front of you can fully bury your blade. So if you ever watched yourself paddle in a video and slowed it down, where the blade tip touches the water is not where the blade tip is fully buried. And for some people who haven't worked on this, your board has forward momentum, right? My board's moving through the water with forward momentum. If my board has forward momentum and I put my paddle straight down into the water, the paddle's going to be moving backwards in relation to the board. So board has, okay, hold on. Board, this is so hard to do. Board has forward momentum. If I put my paddle straight down into the water, it's actually moving backwards in relation to my board. So I want my paddle to enter the water with forward momentum to sort of match the momentum of the board, so that I can get my paddle blade fully buried as far out in front of me as possible, as opposed to having it be closer to me. Video yourself from the side and watch it in slow motion. You'll see what I'm talking about, how long it takes you to bury your blade. So we need to have forward momentum with our paddle at the catch. Now, I can make that happen in several ways. I'm going to talk to you today about how to make that happen using primarily your body weight. So, okay. So this paddle doesn't have a handle, but that's okay. I'm going to be grabbing lower to simulate like my paddle going into the water. Since I'm standing on land here and I can't actually sink my blade in, I'm going to grab like a blade's length down the shaft, so it's like the paddle's buried into the water. Okay, so let me get back on track. Forward momentum as a catch, how we can make that happen using my body weight. So you can make that happen in several ways. You can make that happen by putting your back into it, and I want to have forward momentum. So let me just start with this one. So forward momentum, I could like we hear this say like scoop or spear the water. Yeah, I could do that with my arms, but then that's all in my arms. And if you've heard me say this before, it's you've heard probably Coach Larry Kane say it before, preferentially use larger muscle groups over smaller muscle groups. And your arms have some of the smallest muscle groups in your body, so we don't at any point want to be accentuating using just the arms. So I'm here at the catch. I could use my hands to go forward and my arms to go have forward momentum. I could lean forward and stick my butt out and use my back. And what that does is that puts a lot of stress on the low back. So that's typically not a good idea for most paddlers. The way that I like to coach it is, hi butterfly, is that I want to use my whole entire body. So I like to think about the paddle as an extension of my body, and I'm actually paddling and using my body to propel myself. I'm trying to think about using my whole entire body to propel myself, as opposed to thinking about using my paddle to pull myself or using my paddle to propel myself. The paddle is just my tool. The paddle is just my lever. The paddle is just an extension of my body. Think about this. I love thinking of the paddle as your lever and using your body weight, like being a pole vaulter. And I'm going to reference that again, but just I'm going to throw that thought into there a little bit. So I could use my arms, I could use my back, or I could, if my paddle blade needs to enter the water going forward and in to have that forward momentum, which I explained why, I want my whole entire body to move forward and down. So my spine is still neutral. My core is still stable. And I've got body weight forward and down. So the main way that I'm making that happen, as I'm hinging. So hinging would be, hip hinging is a flexion at the hips, the knees bend, the hips flex, my spine stays straight, and my upper body lowers down. So that's happening, yes. And I talk a lot about hip hinging in the video from last week, and did a whole talk on hip hinging several weeks ago, so that's another great one to look up if you haven't watched it already. But the main way that's how I'm getting my body weight to go, that's how I'm getting my body to lower down. How I'm getting my body to go forward and in and get that forward momentum at the catch is actually down in the ankles. So the forward part is ankle flexion. You've heard and you see, like, I'm literally, my body weight is onto my paddle, it's holding me up. So this ankle flexion is something that's really helpful. You hear Larry say it as ski boots. If your ankles are tight, this is an area that can be mobilized. You can do ankle mobilities in your warm-ups and your on land sessions, and I highly recommend ankle stretching and strengthening exercises, because we use them a lot in paddlers. If you're good at using your body weight, or if you're practicing using your body weight, you're going to be using your ankles a lot. So I'm hip hinging, but if you don't have a paddle, or you just want to pick your paddle up for a second and sort of like just think about leaning forward from the ankles, right? You feel that? So then put your paddle in front of you, and that point where you're like, whoa, 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 that's the point where your paddle's going into the water. So it's not quite like I'm actually falling onto my paddle, but I am, body weight's going, whoa, 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 whoa. That's actually not what it feels like when you're paddling, but that's the point at which your paddle's entering the water when you're on the, whoa. I hope so. That one headphone just went crazy, so let me know if y'all can still hear me. All right. Back on track. Body weight. So I was talking about using body weight at the catch. I was talking about how you're hinging, but that the forward part is coming from the ankles, and so paddle goes forward and in, body goes forward and down, and I was demoing how you can practice that on land. Okay, and then, actually I don't have that much more I want to talk about. So another reason why this is helpful, besides just a really body mechanically sound way to get forward momentum at the catch, which is important because we're trying to set our blade as far out in front of us as we can. So that forward momentum at the catch is important. And keeping a nice neutral spine and stabilized core when you make that happen is important. So as opposed to going here or here. Another reason why using body weight at the catch is helpful is because if I actually do transfer weight onto my paddle, and if you've ever watched some of my drill videos before, in some of the drills, the heels even lift up to exaggerate this. Not when you're paddling at a smooth rhythm. You don't want your heels lifting up because that's going to be too much on the toes, arches, and ankles. But if you actually are getting body weight onto the paddle, your board is getting lighter because body weight's coming off your board onto the paddle. So the board actually lifts up in the water a bit every time you take a stroke. And so when your board lifts up and glides up on top of the water a little bit more, it's going to move through the water lighter and easier. Again, back to that pole vaulting metaphor. I'm going to transfer my weight onto my paddle, and I'm going to get my body weight up and over. So when we're paddling, we talk about and we think about we're pulling our hips or our body past the paddle, and that's how we're propelling ourselves. Paddle goes in the water, we pull ourselves past it, right? So think about this. Body weight goes onto the blade. We pull our body weight up and past the paddle. And the reason that's a helpful analogy is because now I'm thinking about, oh, that up and over, that has to come from the hips. The movement is generated from the hips. So if I got my body weight onto my paddle, the pull or the drive is actually, and I triple flex in my hips, ankles, and knees. The drive or the pull is actually getting my body weight back up underneath me. So body weight here, body weight back up underneath me, and what that looks like is extend, straighten. So I'm actually lowering down at the catch, and as I'm pulling, I'm standing back up, and I'm trying to do that before the paddle comes out of the water. You hear me say this all the time because this is so common. What I see is paddle goes into the water, I lower, paddle comes out of the water, and then I stand up. Paddle comes out of the water, and then I stand up. What I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to coach you to do, is you're actually standing up with the paddle still in the water. Then the paddle's coming out of the water, you're lowering back down. Then the paddle's coming out of the water, if that makes sense. It's a lot about, of course, the hips, a lot about timing, but what we're talking about today is the body weight. So practice those few things that I mentioned, which was equal body weight. The board's not tipping from side to side, so you're not leaning on one rail or one foot or the other when you're paddling and unconsciously steering yourself. And if you are, you're doing it consciously to steer yourself. Thinking about the board trim, where your body weight is forward and backwards on your board, adjusting the trim over the nose of your board, how it's riding through the water when you're in dynamic water. And then using body weight at the catch, getting the paddle to go forward and in as your whole entire body goes forward and down. Even more advanced, you can actually transfer body weight onto the blade so the board lifts up, gets lighter, and glides up on top of the water more easily. So that was a lot. That was a big topic. Let me know how that lands for you. And if you have questions, and we're going to keep talking about these things. And yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks if you caught part 1 and part 2 for coming back on and making sure I was still here. And let's see. Thanks to SIC for hosting us on this platform, making it possible to share all this awesome information. Yeah, what else? I have 1 spot left in my women's retreat in September. So reach out if you think that spot is for you. I'm not taking any more clients, but I do have a waiting list. If you think that coaching is something you'd like to have more in depth from me, and check out my website, for more information, and I'll try and make links to all the videos I referenced, but if not, yeah, you can search for Talk Stories on my Facebook profile, SIC's Facebook profile, or on their YouTube channel. Okay, have a beautiful day.